Sermon recap, and we went over James 2:14 through 26, and it's a famous passage on faith and works. And many times people think it's an apparent contradiction in the scripture, because Paul said you're saved by faith, or by grace, by faith, not as a result of your works. And then James says, how can you say you have faith if you have no works? And were they arguing together? And I explained the kind of literary historical context is that Paul's writings were in the 50s AD, about mid-50s AD, and the book of James is written around the mid-60s AD, and Paul's letters would have been circulated throughout the whole church, throughout the Roman Empire, especially the church in Jerusalem that James was in charge of. So James knew about the doctrine of salvation by faith, and he agreed with it. As a matter of fact, in the book of Acts, there's something called the Jerusalem Council that James rules on, that the Gentiles don't need to act like they're Jewish and follow all the Jewish customs and laws. They just need to abstain from sexual immorality and food sacrificed to idols and whatnot. So the truth of the matter is, James believed that you're saved by your faith. But what he was trying to do is show you faith and works are the same coin. They're just different sides. One's heads, one's tails. And that your faith is always followed by steps of obedience, or it's not really faith, it's a dead faith. He used the example that so that the spirit removed from the body's dead. In the same way, action removed from your faith means your faith is dead. So he equates that to it, and that's why the book of James is very practical. When Paul was writing his epistles, the first part of his epistle in Ephesians, where he says you're saved by grace, not as a result of works, he's explaining the gospel, he's explaining theologically. But when you get to the back part of all of his epistles, they're all very practical, like James. Do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, do this. He's trying to show faith and works go hand in hand. And so we talked about that. We talked about the nature of belief, how the demons, Jonathan Edwards wrote a sermon about the verses 19 and 20, and how the demons really know more about God than you. They have a better doctrine of God than you, in the sense that they were fallen angels. At some point, they had been in the throne room of God, and they've ordered their life around what they know about their doctrine of God. And here's the deal. He's using that example because it's not just about what you know and how much you know, and even really how you order your life around what you know. It's about what you do in obedience to God. That's really the fruit of true faith. And if you're not obeying God, even in the small things in your life, you'll never obey Him in the big things in your life. So then, finally, we talked about a faith that works, and we used James used the analogy of Abraham, and he said, and Rahab, and neither of them were perfect saints either. Rahab was a prostitute, and she was justified by her faith, but her faith was followed by action. She believed that Israel's God was the true God. She rejected her family's God. She was literally a traitor, and she took in Jewish spies, and she believed that God would protect her, and God did protect her. Okay, Abraham. It says that Abraham believed God when he went to sacrifice his son to God on the altar, and God said, "No, don't do it." And it said Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Belief was followed by action. If you just, and I used an analogy of learning guitar. I had lots of people I taught guitar. A lot of people wanted to learn to play guitar, but really they didn't want to learn. Most of them thought it was a good idea, and they didn't want to go and do the things that it would take to learn to play guitar. Another example I always use is I want washboard abs. I don't really want washboard abs, or I would do what it takes to get washboard abs. I would eat clean. I would do my sit-ups. I would exercise more. I would do all those things. So the truth of the matter is that what you believe is always followed by your actions. And you can say you believe this, but if you're not doing it, you probably don't really believe it. So those two go together. Enjoy the study. In the end, the last question is for you to really challenge you guys, if you're brave enough to take it, is maybe some of you speak up. Maybe God has called you to something. Maybe it's a small step of faith. an itty bitty one, that's okay, or a big one, and share that step of faith with your group. That accountability, they're going to help when you verbalize it. One, it's going to help you follow through on it, and two, they're going to ask you about it too. And group, don't judge if they don't do it, but be a safe place where people can verbalize those things, and when they don't do it, encourage them to. All right, so enjoy the study and go be the church.